Hello and welcome to Geeky Guys. If you're into geeky things, we're the guys for you. Just a quick note before we get into the video for today. If you go onto the Patreon site in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, there's a couple of exclusive videos that I'm putting up there for patrons. So if you would like to become a patron, now's the best time to do so. You're going to get more exclusive videos per week and per month and whatnot. So go and check that out. As always, all links are in the description. Alright guys, we're getting into this video here for today where we're having a look at the new Boros or Lorehold commander deck here for today. I'm going to always call it Boros, I think, but it does pose that question sometimes where some people who will be growing up with these versions of decks will start calling it Lorehold, but then again Lorehold is based to Strixhaven, so I don't know whether we're ever going to see Lorehold that much again, but then again, you know, some people will just pick that up and sort of run with it anyway, so you might find some people that are out there. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's red and white, and we know what it's all about, or we used to know what it was all about at least. Now we're finding a new identity for this color combination, which is great because a lot of people have really wanted Boros to, or Lorehold, as again I might be calling it, to find a different identity than just strictly nothing for so long, then just, oh, maybe it's equipments, maybe, and then, oh yeah, just equipments, okay, yep, just equipments, alright. Great. Oh, cool. Now we've actually got something that, you know, is unique, is different. You know, it's dealing with artifacts. You could throw some equipment certainly in this deck. Certainly think you can put some lightning greaves and swiftfoot boots in this deck and whatnot and some other things. But there's not too many equipment that I think would be too good in this deck. But anyway, we'll get into what this deck and what this this face command is all about. Now, we did talk about this commander, I believe, in our we did talk about this commander in our Commander 2021 preview. So I'm not going to go too much over it. If you really want to see my thoughts on Oscar, you know, you can check them out in that video. I'll put up a link somewhere here in the video cards for you to go and check that out. It's also in our playlists of EDH Geeks, so you can check it out there as well. It's been recently uploaded to the channel, so it's still pretty easy to find if it's floating around somewhere. But, you know, Oscar, while I was looking through this deck, you know, full reveal now, there are a couple other legendaries, but again, when I was sort of talking about the legendaries from the Commander set, I was sort of saying they usually put, you know, the face commander that's on the box is usually the most interesting legendary to build around, and I don't think there's any difference here. One thing that I got a bit of information on while I was having a look at these deck reveals was that they're moving to a new packaging system which is more environmentally friendly, which is quite good. We do want to be as eco-friendly as we can with our hobby of collecting cardboard rectangles and whatnot. So, you know, we do want to be as ethical as we can be in our little hobby. So that is a good thing. I'm not sure how ethical friendly the solution they came up with was, but apparently it's fairly ethical, which is good. I would like, you know, somebody who's a bit more onto that sort of stuff to sort of, you know, because I know they did their research and whatnot, but I would like, you know, to hear from other people to be like, well, you know, they actually, you know, did a fair job, or that, you know, they've still got to have some packaging, obviously. So you know, where does it begin and where does it end sort of thing is quite hard to sort of, figure out and whatnot, things like that. So, but anyway, as I said, I think this commander is the most interesting legend, or this legend is the most interesting commander to build around in this deck. The other legendaries, they have their own sort of direction. There's a mono white and a mono red one, and there is one other Boros or Lorehold commander also in this deck, I do believe, and I think that's it. So, that is how it is. The two mono-coloured legends, neither of them have partner or partner with or anything like that. So they are mono-coloured commanders, which is what I believe the rest of the decks have as well. None of them have partners or partner with. So they have one commander that's the face commander, a sub commander if you want it, and two, just independent legends that are, fairly good in this deck. So I think we really want to, if you're going to pick up this deck and you're going to pull it out and, play with it a few times, if you're just like a new player and you just want to get the precon, and just play it with your friends, whatever, that's all cool. This is just a deck upgrade guide. This is if you want to go, okay, what should I do to this deck? Now, it's sometimes fairly easy to go, oh yeah, I want to get rid of all these tap lands and whatnot for the most part and get better lands in here. That's pretty clear and pretty obvious. And I can go over some of those in just a moment and whatnot. But, beyond that, it starts becoming, okay, so actually what does my commander, this specific card, this specific legend, want me to do? And that's the best way to figure out what cards you want to put into this deck. But first, before we get into what we're putting into this deck, what we're taking out of this deck, we're going to have a quick look at the stats of this deck before we go too far. So when I was looking through, the number of cards that are in this deck, there's about 12 ramp cards. There's about 10 or so card draw cards. Now, there's a couple cards like Command Sphere and Hedron Archive, and a couple other cards here and there that sort of sacrifice or whatever, or do something else to draw a card or a couple cards or whatever. I didn't really count those. I counted more cards that I sort of, or I counted them as a half of a card, more or less, for the most part. I just wanted to count cards that actually drew you cards or recurred you cards, because that's another form of card advantage that, I sort of needed to count because, Boros doesn't really have that much for the most part, and this deck certainly doesn't either. But still, getting to that 10, it's pretty much there, I think. It's just right on where it's just at the level where you can say it's, running on an alright cylinder. Single target removal was at about 6. Now, I did count some of the sorcery cards as single target removal because I was starting to go, oh, that seems very low. But then I looked at the sorceries and I was like, oh yeah, I'll count this then, because, it actually does remove stuff. And if you haven't got anything else, which makes me a little bit sad as to why they didn't put anything better in this deck, or why some of those new sorceries weren't instants, didn't make much sense to that degree, but whatever. 3 board wipes, fairly typical sort of stuff here. Number of new cards, 18 new cards, and the number of reprints was 64, and that includes the basic lands. So, there's quite a few reprints in this deck. Now, reprint value about $132. That's US price as well. I looked that up from Card Kingdom. So I didn't do the conversion here for Australia or for the UK or for wherever else. I just looked at the price that was on there for Card Kingdom. So that's what it came out as. Of course, basic lands aren't included in that price. Basic lands are usually just free anyway, so that's, and obviously as well, new cards weren't included in that value, because again, reprints, even though there's reprints, quote unquote, from the Strixhaven set itself, the reprints from that set, most of them are probably going to be like 25-cent commons and uncommons and whatnot for the most part. Anyway, so it's not going to add to much of the price anyway. But some of the other cards that are from that set, we just don't have the prices for them, so it doesn't include those prices. Of course, when you're looking at a deck like this, you want to look at the heavy hitting cards, so the cards that sort of jump out off the page and say, hey, valuable reprint. So now let's have a look at the cards in this deck that actually cracked the price barrier of $2 or more. And of course, you've got Sol Ring and Arcane Signet there. Obviously, those cards are going to, crack the top, the above $2 or so. I think you want to look at cards that are above $2 or so, because otherwise you sort of start to find that cards, prices for trades and whatnot sort of fall apart to a degree. You don't get nearly as much value from a 50-cent or a dollar card or whatnot. Once you start saying, okay, my card's worth a couple bucks, at least I'll get a buck or two off of it in trade or whatnot. Of course, everyone wants their Sol Ring, everyone wants their Arcane Signet, so it's not too surprising that these are there, even though these are reprinted, and especially like these have been reprinted half dozen times in the last year, and their prices just have not tanked at all, really at all. No matter the number of printings that they've had, just due to their popularity and the growing popularity of Commander. So they're still gonna sit here. A couple cards that are sitting right at about $2. Boris Charm, Duretti, Scrap Savant. They're right at $2. They're not major reprints, but they're decent reprints to a degree. Boris Charm, I believe that was in the pre-constructed deck last time, I believe. So I think its price has gone down just that little bit. I think it was at $3 or $4 last time, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But Duretti hasn't been reprinted in quite a while, but still not a huge value card. But the huge value cards, or the bigger value cards, Combustible Gearhulk coming in at about $4 there. Still pretty good card. It's not as good as some of the other Gearhulks. But still, it's still, worth $5 or so, I guess, roughly speaking. Depends where you get it and that as well. 1,000-Year Elixir at $10 and Hellkite Tyrant at $16. So both of those, especially 1,000-Year Elixir, haven't been reprinted in quite a while, so it's good to see them get a reprint. Hellkite Tyrant, I'm not sure when that got a reprint. I think they actually got a reprint a couple times in a few Commander decks and whatnot, so I'm surprised. But then again, at least of its price, but then again, it's just a really popular card that a lot of people really want, and is a really quite powerful card. So, or maybe I'm just wrong in thinking that they actually had those reprints. But that's the reprints of notable value that are in this deck. So now we're going to actually go into, cutting cards and suggesting some cards to add, because I'm not actually going to build this deck. I'm going to leave it up to you guys. If you guys are interested in building this deck, you go out and you build it the way you want to. I'm just going to sit here and say, hey, look, these are my suggestions. If you want to build this deck, what would you want to cut, what would you want to potentially add. Alright, so that's the way this is going, okay? I'm not going to build this deck and show you how you actually build it, because that's up to you guys, because you guys, you know, you might go, oh, well, actually, I want to build it in this way, I want to build it in that way, and some people might go, oh, well, I don't know, I might actually build one of the other, you know, commanders that's in this deck. I might build a mono white deck, I might build a mono red deck, I might build the other commander, I might just, you know, want a few of the good cards that are in this deck. I might just want my Soul Ring and Arcane Signet and a few other cards and whatnot from this deck, so that I can actually throw a deck together with some of the other stuff that I've, you know, had sitting in my trade binder or whatever for the last couple of years or whatever it is. So, you know, this is up to you guys, but this is what I would suggest if you're wanting to build this deck. With this commander. So first off, we're going to start finding cards to cut from this deck. And it is a hard process sometimes to cut cards, but the first, like, I'm going to group these into groups of 3 or 4 or so, just to make it easier, and that's with adding cards as well, because it makes it a little bit clearer what's going on, a slower and easier process to comprehend. We're going to get rid of some of the new cards as well as some of the reprinted cards. To me, what this deck wants to do and why you want to cut some of these cards and why you want to add certain other cards is because of the very specific synergy that this deck has. It wants to sack artifacts and it wants to recur artifacts from the graveyard for value. So I'm assuming that this is, you know, eventually you would find this to be more of a combo deck. It's not strictly a combo deck, but, you know, all the other stuff that this deck's sort of doing is just sort of cutesy sort of stuff that really, it doesn't help you that much with really what you're trying to do, I don't think. So Horde Smelter Dragon, Hellkite Igniter, and Steel Overseer are 3 cards I think you can very easily cut from this deck. I don't think, you know, maybe Steel Overseer, you could do some stuff with that since it is an artifact. The other 2 do somewhat care about artifacts to a degree. I just don't think that they're powerful enough in this specific deck. There are some decks that it would be good in, or they would be good in, but this isn't the one for these, I don't think. So I would consider very highly cutting these cards. And then we are going to cut one of the new commanders as well. The Mono Red commander from this deck, which I cannot remember the name. Lever, or whatever her name is, from this deck. I don't think she's that good. Also, just Boris Locket, the new 3-mana draw spell. I can't really remember what it's called. The 3-mana white one. I can't remember what it's called, as I said. And Dispeller's Capsule as well. I don't think, like, Dispeller's Capsule, maybe you could keep it in, but I don't think you really need it. Just destroying an enchantment, basically for 4 mana. It is technically an instant speed ability, and you can copy it with your commander and whatnot to get more value out of it. But if it said artifact or enchantment, then I'd be, you know, oh, actually it does say artifact or enchantment. Whoops. So maybe you could keep that one in, but then again, it's still very slow and it's a lot of mana to invest. There are things that can get around that effect, but again, I just don't think that it's the best effect. You want just the instance in your hand for the most part. Yes, more synergistic than an instant speed spell, but you really want to be able to have that surprise, here's my spell out of my hand. You don't want somebody to be able to see, oh, I see you have the Dispeller's Capsule there, so you're going to destroy some of my artifacts or enchantments. You know, you don't want to telegraph it. You don't want anyone to know what you're going to do. You want people to be constantly guessing. Forest Locket, yeah, it can be somewhat good, but there are way better options than it, so no, just get it out of here. I don't think we really need it in here at all. Then just some other cards here in this pile. A lot of these cards do care about artifacts and whatnot, and are okay. Like, I've seen a lot of people use Bosch. I've seen some people use Hellkite, Steel Hellkite rather. I was about to say Hellkite Turret, that was before. And Jaw, those are all right. Actually, Jaw is another commander in the right colours, but it's not a new commander, so that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying commanders of the right colour. But anyway, exploration technique or expulsion technique or whatever it is, the new demonstrate card. Yeah, sure, it you can destroy 2 things or whatever with it, and it's got that political value where you can be like, hey, opponent, let's work together and take out our biggest threat right now, and then we'll get to dealing with our business later. But honestly, no. No. You're just not. It's just not really that worth it to do this. You just want to kill the thing that somebody has. If you want a 4 mana, get rid of 2 things. There are things that are in this deck that do that. You don't really need this sort of effect. If you're playing Group Hug, maybe then you throw it in there. Still Hellkite again and Bosch, maybe you could find some sort of place for this, but again, because they're artifacts, but again, I don't really think you need them. I think you need more cheap things. Unstable Obelisk, 3 mana Mana Rock. First, that part we don't really want, plus it offers 0 fixing. 0 whatsoever. So that we can get that kind of an effect easier and cheaper and better and even get fixing. Some small cost, but that's irrelevant for the most part. If we ever get to 7 mana, which is very unlikely again, we're telegraphing that we have a piece of removal on our field. We don't want to let our opponents know that we have this piece of removal on our field at all. We don't want them to know what we're up to, what we're doing, why we've got this card, or why we've got 4 cards in our hand. They're just like gonna have to guess. Doesn't he have the mana to cast them? I don't know. Things like that. You don't want to telegraph that you have anything. For the most part, you want people to keep guessing. The new Boros, other Boros commanders in this deck, Alaru, whatever her name is. I think this deserves its own deck. It's very cool and very interesting, but it just does not fit in this deck. Thopter Engineer, it makes some fodder for us, so I don't know, but again, it's just sort of underwhelming, and it doesn't keep creating fodder for us, which is something that we would want. Just those 2 Thopters, just that one off, and since it's not an artifact or anything, or something that we could recur it somewhat, but not that easily. Not as easily as what we can recur artifacts in this deck and whatnot. So we just don't really want this sort of thing. The new tap to sacrifice a artifact to basically tutor or cascade for an artifact from the top of your library. I don't think this is good, because the thing is, we don't have a lot of top deck manipulations. Sure, we'll get something random and maybe that'll give us some extra value if we just sacrifice a token, but it is once per use sort of an effect, and we more want to get things into or out of our graveyard for the most part. So it can offer some form of A-card advantage to a degree again, but I just don't think that we actually really want this in here. So we'll move to mostly land cards that we're also thinking about cutting from this deck. So Temple of the False God, guys, I really don't like this card that much. If you really want to keep it in, you guys can keep it in. But I would suggest you take it out because it's just a trap. We're also putting in some better cards into this deck, so we want some space to actually, put something in here. So this is just another card that you can just sort of cut pretty easily. Sun Home, Rogue's Passage, and the new Study Hall. All of these, I don't think you really need them. They don't do anything particularly good that our deck actually wants to do. We don't really need these sorts of effects. We don't really need to get in with our creatures that much. We're not Voltron for the most part. Maybe we would be to a degree, but not really. We're not really Voltron. We're just trying to either get enough value out of our graveyard and burn people out that way, or win in other ways by making artifacts and whatnot just for free, more or less. We're not trying to pump our commander. Study Hall's just not very good. It does add a colorless. We can scry with it, but I just don't think that it offers enough for the investment of an additional mana. We need our mana way too much for being able to scry once in a blue moon every now and again. And if we really want scry, we can find some other cards that, just scry when we cast our commander. So I don't think that we really need this. Slayer's Stronghold, Phyrexia's Core, and Boros Garrison as well. I don't think we really need these. Maybe Boros Garrison or Phyrexia's Core you could maybe make an argument for here or there. I don't think we really need them though. And we just can find other things that we really want to put in here that, again, you just sort of start going, well, where am I going to find all the room to sort of put these things? And it just is like, well, eventually you've got to make some form of cut. And these are just sort of the ones that I thought, yeah, these are worth cutting. Alright, so what are some cards that we really, really want to think about putting in, or you guys would want to think about putting into this deck? Goblin Welder. It's kind of hard to get your hands on a Goblin Welder, but if you can get your hands on a Goblin Welder, I'd put in a Goblin Welder. It's really good. It changes basically the legality of where one artifact is. So you sack one artifact that's on your battlefield and you return an artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is what I mean. This is where we want to be. We want to sacrifice a random token that we make to bring back an artifact that actually really matters. We don't want too many enchantments in this deck or whatnot, or other things, but we do want some. Anointed Procession is really, really good because the ability of our commander is to make token copies of those permanents that we exile and whatnot. So if we get double the number of those tokens, that's really good. Zerda's also really good because it reduces our commander's ability by 2, so we can basically, it ramps us a little bit to give us extra activations, helps us get lands very much more easily and whatnot, things like that. So it really is helpful for this sort of a deck that wants to use some, especially with an ability that is on our commander. The removal in this deck, as I said, not the best. You want a Swords to Plowshares in this deck somewhere. So definitely add that. Again, more removal here with Generous Gift, Talisman of Conviction rather, as well. So those are really good. Mere Retriever, this works really well with our deck because we're going to be sacrificing, and returning it and sacrificing it and returning it to get all of our more relevant artifacts back into play and whatnot. So it's a really good bit player here in this deck. There's also a couple other things that do sort of a similar thing to that. And as I said, we're on sort of a burn plan with what this deck, I think, wants to do. So you want Reckless Fireweaver and Firebrand Archer, things like this that just ping your opponents when artifacts enter your battlefield or when you cast artifacts or non-creature spells and whatnot. Walking Archaic is an interesting new card from Strixhaven, and I think you should probably try to run this card if you can get your hands on it. Don't think it's that expensive from the new set, but you know, if you can find one, if you can pick one up, I would certainly toss it into this sort of a deck because it is quite good as well in building this deck from cards that you might happen to open roughly at the same time as when this does come out. So just consider that as well. Junk Diver, we definitely want this. Same as Near Retriever, return some stuff from our graveyard. We really want that returning sort of effect into this deck. Again, more removal, Wear Tear. It's the cheapest removal that's sort of in our colors, that sort of hits two things at once, so that's really good. Chaos Warp gets rid of any non-land permanent. Yeah, they get something else randomly out of their deck, but you know, when you're about to die, you know, this is just really decent and really good and can get you out of some sticky situations. And here's just some really good, you know, like value cards for the most part. Valkyrie Awakening is really good. You know, we do put some of the cards to our bottom of our library. That's not the best sometimes because we want some of the artifacts or we want some of the other cards in our graveyard, but you know, just the power of this card just to loot some cards away to the bottom of our deck and then just draw a fresh half dozen cards or whatever we decide to draw is really good. Jessica's Will is obviously really good. You know, negative mana for Ancestral Recall is apparently really good, or even positive mana for Ancestral Recall is really good. So if you have these, or if you have the budget for them, go and pick them up. Rings of Brightheart, it's actually quite cheap now as well, so you can maybe find a slot for this. It works really well with our commander, just copying its ability, so we basically get, you know, another, you know, anointed procession so that we can get more tokens of the things that we're trying to copy, whatnot, things like that. Illusionist Braces basically does the same thing as that, but we do have to equip it to our commander. Now, Alchemist Vial, this is just sort of a sort of quote-unquote cantrip card that I'm putting in here. Once you sacrifice it and get rid of it, and you can sacrifice it to its own ability as well, it doesn't really matter, but once you sacrifice it and you get it back, it starts to really add up to drawing a lot of cards for you and getting you deeper in your deck. Guildless Commons, this is a really good card that you would probably want to put into this deck. So, you know, find a slot for it if you can. As I said, take out Temple of False God and just put this in. Or Boros Guildgate, or whatever it is, Boros Garrison. It can fit in that slot. You know, Boros Signet, Felwar Stone, just to round out some ramp slots here as well, you know. So those can be really, really quite good. Then lands. So, you know, it obviously depends on your budget, because for the most part, the lands section of any deck is usually going to be the place where the budget sort of just flies off the radar to a degree. So, you know, you need to work within what you do have, or what you have access to, or what your budget is. You need to work out your budget for you. I can't tell you what your budget is. Your budget might be $500. Your budget might be, you know, 50 cents. Or whatever, you know, it might be $5. So you need to work out what you want for the most part. Uh, Spectre Seeding, Rugged Prairie, Sacred Foundry, all these cards are really quite good. Just in two colors here, so these are just fine in terms of Rugged Prairie mostly. But Spectre Seeding and Sacred Foundry are really good. So if you have the budget for them, again, I've put the prices for these ones there. I don't think I put the prices for many of the others, but I put the prices here for these ones. Clifftop Retreat, the new land that comes from Strixhaven, that's basically the old Shadows over the Innistrad reveal lands sort of cycle. These are just fine as well, as you're into colours, so they're just fine. Some more cards here that are just sort of utility cards. Inventor's Fair, War Room. Again, I've put the prices up for several of these because I thought that was a bit relevant to more of these cards. So, if you've got these or if you've got the access to get these, definitely try to put them in. One other card that I was wanting to talk about was Lorehold Campus. I don't know, if you're on a very strict budget, keep this in for the most part. Just keep it in, it's just fine. Don't worry too much about taking it out. But if you want to play at the higher level tables and whatnot, I would take this out. I'm not sure exactly which one of the dual lands you want to put in for it, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter. You can just pick and choose. And again, there's maybe a few too many basics in this deck one way or the other, but again, it doesn't really matter that much. For the most part, I still think that this is an alright card for budget, or, just having in the deck for a little while. You don't need to worry too much about taking this one out. So that is how or the things I would consider if you were looking at building this deck. Now, there are some other cards that consider. There's the card that has Lieutenant and makes free Thopters, and I would consider putting that in here somewhere if you can get hold of one. It's quite good. So, those cards certainly do fit into this sort of deck. But again, these are the top cards that I thought, just off the top of my head, or just having a quick look through, quick EDH Rec search or a quick Scryfall search that would go well in this deck. But guys, let me know what you guys want to do down there in the comments. Did you like this deck? Do you want me to do more deck techs? Not just the precons, power-ups and whatnot. Do you want me to do more stuff like this? Let me know all the things down there in the comments below. Please remember that the success of channels like this is based on viewers like you. So please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing if you would like to support this content. You can also get social with us on our Discord and on our Facebook. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon. All links are in the description. Thank you for your support. It really means a lot. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today, and if you have, I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.